wasn't it? Holy cow. So we're here today to talk about Albie's Elevator, and before we do that, some of you may not know Albie or who she is, so let's set that up a little bit.
Oh, hi! I'm so glad you're here.
Get ready for a brand new show coming to WHYY this summer. Join elevator operator Albie as she explores the ups and downs of her own big feelings with the help of her neighbors and real artists. Come play along with Albie's Elevator, coming to YouTube at WHYY Kids.
Okay, so that's present day. So now we're going to take you backwards to the past, like a Tarantino movie, and start from the beginning. And Caitlin's going to take that.
Yeah, sure. So that's Albie's Elevator, and it's so funny to hear Jen do the preamble of what endurance means, and then be like, and now we're talking about a kid's show. But genuinely, the project itself was such an act of kind of overcoming obstacles and endurance throughout, and kind of remaining joyful throughout the process. So we felt like it really fit. So in December of 2020, the William Penn Foundation approached WHYY about creating original children's programming. They were pretty much like, what would you guys do if you could do something? And so I put together a proposal of what that would look like for us. Grant funding is always really complicated. It took about 8 months before we received word that we were going to get the funding, and there were tons of revisions, different proposals going into it. We ultimately agreed to produce 2 shows simultaneously, 15 episodes each. Our run times are long because there's no commercials for kids on public media, so they're 28:46 is the run time. And we would produce them over 2 years. The grant also came with conditions, which is super normal for a grant. The conditions were we had to raise an additional sum of money in support of the project, and we had to get 10 stations to carry it without having seen anything, which is like, okay, yeah, that'll be fine. We'll just tell them about the puppet. And that was the halfway point. So we wouldn't unlock the second round of funding until we met those conditions. But in given an opportunity like this, we of course were like, yeah, no problem, we'll make it happen. So WHYY also, our history of production is typically news magazine shows, local documentaries. We are not used to doing scripted content at all, I would say. And specifically, when you're doing something for public media, you're holding it to the standard of national kids public media, which for PBS Kids is there's a curriculum, it's educationally vetted, it's something that parents and caregivers really trust, so we wanted to hold ourselves to that standard. So not only were we making these shows from scratch, but we were also kind of building the process around what they looked like. Really early on, we talked to different stakeholders, different childhood educators, we did market research, we honed in on our concepts, because again, we're doing 2 shows at the same time. And we took all that feedback and we tried to adjust what our concepts were to do as much as we could with the budget and the timeline that we had. Early on, my job felt a lot like being a translator. It was a lot of, okay, I'm talking to people internally, and we're also talking to funders, and we're also talking to outside vendors, and everyone is coming to this with different experience and a different background, and what is a ton of money for one person is almost no money for someone else, and what is something that one person thinks is a really easy ask is impossible and something that's way outside the scope of what another person does. So it was a lot of trying to get people on the same page and kind of understand how we had to work together. And there were some days, even really, really early on in the project, where I was like, oh, this is not going to happen. This is just going to be too impossible for the constraints. But in that situation, your other option, right, is to not do it. Those are the options. You do it or you don't do it. And if you don't do it, if you're a creative person, that's not an option, right? Like, all you want to do is build things that are existing in your brain outside of your brain, or have a lot of fun. And I was like, well, it's not going to be fun to not do it. So we have to just figure out how to do it. So pretty early on, I went to talk to Paul and Kevin, who I knew from med school.
Yeah, we should mention we're all doctors.
Yeah. That's why
I'm a doctor and an astronaut.
But then we got into different stuff, other not doctor stuff. And so my background is in film and TV and video production. Kevin's is puppeteering and puppetry and animation. We started working together in 2009. Yeah. And then started working together like official in 2017. Sure. It was all for funsies, and then it wasn't for funsies, right? Yeah. And so Caitlin, we knew from, like we said, doctor stuff. And she came to us and let us know that this was going to happen and that there were going to be RFPs. I want you to really get a good look at these RFPs.
They're really solid. I should say, too, the reason I approached Kevin and Paul, I feel like very fortunate that as an adult, when someone's like, do you know any puppet people? I'm like, I know really good puppet people. Yeah, I know exactly who I'm going to talk to. So as soon as we got the project, I went to them even just to ask for advice in general, because I was like, I don't know if we're going to work with you guys, but just overall, like, I need help on kind of what am I missing here? What do I need to be thinking about? How would you do this? Because I really, really trust both of their brains, and this project was such a huge undertaking that I needed to have people in my corner who I trusted their creativity, I trusted them to get the work done and do it in a way that I was comfortable with. We used to talk about, someone on our team used to be like, oh, I'm really afraid of overstepping, and we were like, we are like 3 people on a football field, there is no overstepping, like we can't cover all this ground on our own, so please do whatever. The other part that was like a hill that I was gonna die on for this project was making sure it was really joyful and it was like a really fun process. I felt like a like super enthusiastic and annoying camp counselor where I was always like, it has to be fun or else they'll know, the children will know. So going to Paul and Kevin, I knew I knew their mentality. I'd worked with them before on so many cadavers and medical projects that I
Surgeries.
I could list so many medical things right now, that I knew that they were going to be a lot of fun to work with. And that to me was like, if you know you're going on a really long road trip and there's going to be like traffic everywhere and detours and potholes and like boulders falling on top of you, like a road trip, like you know you want the people in your car to be people that you want to chill with, or like people that are going to be like, oh, that boulder was unexpected, but I guess we'll just drive around it or over it. I don't know how cars work. So that's why I also went to them really early on. And then when we put these RFPs out, which are requests for proposals, for set design, for puppet design, for production, I made sure they got in their hands if they wanted to bid.
And because we had talked to Caitlin already, we assumed we would be a slam dunk to get all 3 of them. And we were not. So we did get, we got ultimately selected. It's okay, not your fault. We know why. We know the reasons. We were selected for 2, but not all 3. But the first one that we got to, that we were selected for with WHYY was for set design. And so we got to take on the job of, the incredible job of designing and building Albie's elevator. And I'm gonna give Kevin the mic to talk a little bit about like how we approached that and what we did, because I want to just say before I give him the mic, the way we kind of try to do everything is just like, because we're children, sit down as the children we are and go like, well, what are we like? What's cool? What's fun? Not thinking about what's good in the, like what's popular in the world or what the style is, just like, what would we dig on if we were children, because we are. And that's what we did. So, Kev, do you want to talk about some of the...
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Caitlin.
Of course, Kevin.
Thank you, Creative Mornings. Nobody else did Halloween today, huh? It's fine. Don't worry about it. So, one of the most exciting things about this is that Paul and I have always said that, like, the dream job is some version of Muppet Show, Pee-wee's Playhouse, some kind of, like, show where we really just take all of our influences and all of the stuff we've loved over our whole lives and put them in one thing. And Caitlin was great enough to create that show, so we were able to take stuff we love, like old homes, hallways, robots, and aquatic navigational equipment, and really throw it all together into what we thought kids would love, which is a blank wall. There we go. Okay, so here's, these are our early designs. So Paul and I kind of go back and forth when we're designing stuff. I'll sketch stuff like this, and Paul will say, no, 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 Kevin, more circles. So clearly there's a bunch of circles there. Circles, yeah, so I added more circles. But actually, the truth is that we shot for the moon because usually we're like, all right, let's just go as big as possible, and then we'll let the budget tell us what we can and can't do. So as you can see, there's this, this was like a home for Albie, and we were like, oh yeah, it'll be great, it'll come up out of the floor. That's impossible. Things don't come up out of the floor, and puppets exist in them. Yeah, that was nuts. But at the very end of it, we were like, what if we just throw in some fun characters that we think will be fun? And I snuck this guy in there, Mr. Tibbetts. which kids called tidbits, which is also funny. And Caitlin was like, yeah, sure, go for it. Next slide, please. And then obviously that got refined to almost what ended up on screen. I still put the little thing that comes out of the floor up there.
This is what, so we eventually get to work with this great scenic shop that actually builds, we wanted it to be, to last and be functional. So we went with this shop that builds escape rooms and haunted houses instead of a traditional scenic shop. And they were able to make everything more or less function the way it needed to rather than just be functional for picture. And so they really pulled off a lot, but the two things they couldn't pull off were one, that nest that comes out of the ground, because again, impossible. And then second, we had this like spinning orrery of planets that was supposed to move when Albie activated Starling mode, and they were like, bro, this is insane. Well, you can't do this.
We knew the orrery would never work, but we just had to try.
You say that now, but you were pushing for it until I told you no, but that's fine, it's cool. It's cool, man, no problem. Anyway, they brought a bunch of ideas and thoughts to it, and that's something that, and they did it for kind of a song, and that's something that is a theme I think we'll come back to again. Is like when you are asking people to work for less than, you need to be ready for them to get excited and put their heart and soul and their ideas into something, and be ready to accept that as a gift, not push back on it because it's not the exact vision you had. So like, if you want to get people excited, you can't diminish that excitement or like push that excitement back by telling them no. You have to be like accepting and yes and the things that come to you unless they're really crazy or really bad, and then you find a version of it that works. And that became a theme for this whole show till it was delivered. And they brought that. So like Doug, who was the head scenic shop guy, he decided that Albie's handprints should be all over the elevator and paint. We were like, yeah, okay. Then he made a sponge and put paint handprints, like she painted everything herself. And we're like, not our plan, but all right, Doug, let's do it. And that was a big part of even building the set. Caitlin, what, is that wrong?
No, it's so charming and cute.
Isn't it cute?
I'm charmed by our own set.
It's delightful. Yeah. So one of the, I think this is it for that slide. One of the things we did not get was character design. That went to a different shop called Monkey Boys Productions, who had other better credits like Saturday Night Live and helpsters with Sesame Workshop. Cool thing there is Kevin worked at Monkey Boys, and so they brought him in to work on some character design. And I'll pass it off to him to talk about.
You don't have to keep doing this.
Oh, okay, I'll just hold my mic.
The way that this worked was the Monkey Boys will reach out to a bunch of different artists, and we will all submit a bunch of different designs. Luckily, Caitlin was kind of feeding us what she wanted Albie to look like, so we snuck that into our designs, and she was supposed to be a little... how did you describe her originally, Caitlin? Because I don't necessarily remember. I just know that was...
Well, that's like such a cool part about collaboration, right? That I can write in an RFP. I'm like, she's really curious. She gets too enthusiastic about things. She has high highs, low lows. She's not entirely femme. And Kevin's like, yeah, that's what I just drew. Yeah. Also, I should say too, my daughter at the time was really little, and her 2 teeth came in, just her like vampire teeth, not her front teeth. So she only had 2 teeth, and those are the teeth that Albie has, which I think is really sweet.
She was very much inspired by your daughter, and that's what I wore when I was a kid. I would only wear one outfit, and it was that. So I was like, this is what kids wear. But yeah, it was great working with Monkey Boys. Their process is that I would draw for them. They would show it to Caitlin, who I was also showing it to. And then Caitlin would say yes to them, and then she'd send it back, and she'd be like, I told them this. So it was fun. It was a fun thing with many, many different emails. But yeah, as you can see, she kind of goes through an iteration of, I mean, which one would you guys pick? You, sir. Which one would you pick?
One.
Oh, wow, that's exactly the one we chose. Amazing, 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 amazing. Everybody's got great taste here.
But I was lucky because Kevin and I are also working on the set at the same time.
Yeah.
He secretly got to involve me in helping to work with Albie and help design her.
Paul was also involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think I was like, yeah, I know she's handy. Let's give her some overalls. I think was something we talked about. And then her hairstyle was based on a lot of us discussing like what was right for a girl of her her vibe.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know, man.
I have a quick question. Was Monkey Boy aware of your back channeling?
Do you work for them? No. Then no, they weren't. Yeah, no, they were not. They were aware-ish. They had to know. They're not fools. Yeah, and then sometimes I would write to the emails, "Dear Caitlin," but send it to the Monkey Boys, and then I'd write, "Ignore that." So they figured it out. Also, we've been working with them for probably 13 years also.
Yeah, we have a good. I mean, we started working with Monkey Boys when their shop was just 3 people, and now it's a giant warehouse factory of 50 people. So
yeah, we kind of started off like they'd been together for about 4 years, and we started our thing kind of on their back. So we consider them a sister studio.
this was the color exploratory that you did with them, and going. So
I don't like any of these.
Good, we didn't do
Yeah,
any
I
of
know.
them.
That's why I'm saying. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
And internally, so like we would have so many conversations about this. If the character looked like anything else, so she eventually lost her pigtails because she looked too close to Abby Cadabby, and that was a concern for us. We would talk about if she was skewing too femme or too masculine, or what we wanted her to look like and what that was conveying to our audience. We would talk about our horns scary for kids, our teeth scary for kids. We would literally, like every child that I saw during this period, I'd be like, hey, look at this picture. Is this scary? Are you scared of this? Because that's like the last thing we want to do, right, is make a puppet. And then the testing is like, yeah, everyone's terrified. And we're like, great, we're really glad we did this. So Albie came to a stage where I felt like we were pretty good with that. And then we had another character, Huggy Pepper, who we wanted to create as well. Huggy Pepper is the description that I gave, again, slightly deranged as an adult to type this to another adult. I'm like, Huggy Pepper is a gibberish-speaking immortal and a serial entrepreneur who runs a music venue in the elevator. He rents space, and he's constantly changing his business. Make that a character, okay? And I like it because I'm like, that's open-ended. Someone can take that and interpret it and bring their own creative style. But when we went to visit and check in on the puppet builds on April 28th, this was Huggy Pepper. And I was like, boy, that's a fuzzy snake. I would not trust that guy with the business loan. That is not, I don't think that's Huggy Pepper. So I was trying to communicate at the time that like, I don't think this is quite it. This is more what I'm going for. We left the shop, and I was like so panicked because I was like, that can't be Huggy Pepper. Like, I don't trust him at all. That's not Huggy Pepper. And so I thought about it all night, and I tossed and turned. And the next day, I sent Kevin a mood board that is entirely deranged. I was like, this is the spirit of Huggy Pepper. I think we wrote that it was a makeup sponge with a past. And I was like, please. And in my memory, I don't know if the timing was actually this, it was literally like 7 minutes later, Kevin sent back a bunch of sketches, and he was like, are any of these Huggy Pepper? And Huggy was in there. I was like, oh yeah, that's him. That's the guy. That's who I'm like, yeah, he knows all like the shady business dealings. He can get you in places. He's a stand-up guy, but he doesn't play by the rules. This is for a preschool show. Yeah, so it was such a really nice collaboration and feeling like we were speaking the same creative language and getting to Huggy Pepper.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Monkey Boys would get the same direction, and they'd be like, we have no idea what she's talking about. And then Kevin was under this, and then she'd be like, oh yeah, that's right. And they'd be like, why is that right? We had Albie and Huggy Pepper. Here they are. Final form of Albie and Huggy Pepper. First photos that were ever taken of those 2 puppets. They were the first thing that was finished. And they were ready for prime time. And then what happened?
And then I was like, hey, Paul, we should talk about money, because we were shooting the pilot, and at some point I was looking at the money, and I was like, oh no, Paul, hey, we have to do 14 more episodes after this, and we have just twice what we had for the pilot. So that's like you would imagine like 2 episodes, but I was like, we did
That person
14.
laughed.
That's the only natural response. It's just like, so I gave it to Paul, and this is again where it's like the people that you're working with can set such a tone for how your work progresses, because I think in other situations, I would have gone to someone and said like, we have this really low number, and they would have just been like, we can't do it. We can't do it, we're not doing it. And I brought it to Paul, and Paul said, okay. And like I could see his brain turning.
And then you said, did I just make you upset?
I was like, are you sad? Are you mad? We're working on a social emotional show for children, so like talk to me about your feelings right now. But Paul like took it in, and externally like there was no like gnashing of teeth. There was no like, I can't believe blur blur. Instead, Paul came back to me a little while later and was like, these are 3 scenarios. This is the scenario at the budget that you're talking about. This is a middle ground that's a little bit higher, but makes this like a more comfortable production and something we can still do, and it's gonna be so much better. This is another scenario that's like dream world, we're producing it at this end. And seeing those options laid out, we realized that we could kind of make the middle one work, because right now we're producing 2 shows at the same time. So there's benefit to that because I have a full view of what all the resources are, and I know that we can reallocate things from one show to the other show. And the only kind of thing we're missing on that is that I just have to pick up the slack. So if we cut casting, wardrobe, art department from one show, Caitlin Corkery is casting, doing wardrobe, and doing art department for that show. But like that's the empowering thing about having a small team, right? That you can kind of make those calls and decide like this is what's going to be best for everyone. So we kind of got to a good place with it. It also meant a few other stipulations if you want to talk about them.
Can you offer insight to like what kind of like how many are we talking, like 10,000, 100,000? What kind of
Hundreds of thousands from one show. Low hundreds of thousands. And again, it's a thing too where it's like, we talk about this all the time. Some of the numbers that we talk about as an individual, you're like, yeah, I can make a show for that. That's really high. But when you're talking about production at this level and where it has to, remember we have this grant condition that we have to be in 10 other markets, it has to have national appeal. As a viewer, you're not watching something and being like, well, I'm gonna give this a pass. It's a local affiliate show. You're like, I'm watching this up against Don Quixote, I'm watching this up against Sesame Street. It has to kind of have that same.
Right, the viewer only goes, I'm watching a thing that looks like shit. Why does it look like shit? They don't know all that backstory, right? And we knew the show could get done for that number. But I think what I straight up said was like, you can do it. Here's how it works. It's dangerous. People will get hurt, potentially. Here's where it's a little dangerous. There's risk of other kinds, but no one's going to get hurt or go to the hospital. Great. And then here's where if we staff it like a real TV show, but on a lower level, like a local TV show. And we didn't get there, we got here. Mm-hmm. And that's okay.
Slightly dangerous.
What's that?
It was just slightly dangerous.
It was a little, but you know what? No one went to the hospital, and we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But Caitlin, you want to talk more about the other show first, because it is sort of a context for...
So just for context for this, we're on this 2-year timeline. The immovable things of this project, right, are the budget and the timeline. We're on a 2-year timeline. We did focus groups, which I insisted on, which is like, why would I ever insist on that? Because I want to make them better, and I want to like get feedback from the audience, but it also makes it harder. We found out for our older kids show, we had like kids responded well to seeing another kid on screen, which meant that we had to have kid talent leading the show. And our kid talent is incredible. Her name's Bianca Salerno, and she did not want to miss 7th grade. So we had to shoot in the summer. So we got that feedback from the focus group at the end of June. But like, I would have paid any sum of money to miss 7th grade, but she was like, no, I must be there. So because we got that feedback at the end of June, we were like, okay, then we have to shoot most of the show before summer vacation is over, which means that we have to script everything, and we're scripting to an educational standard. So we have a curriculum. We work with an educational advisor. We pitch stories. She tells us if they're developmentally appropriate, if we're handling things in a way that will resonate with kids. There's so much back and forth. We have to find arts partners because it's a virtual field trip show, so every episode is shot on location somewhere. So we have to find arts partners that jive with us, that are kind of getting what we're doing, that are on board with us filming there. There's so many moving pieces. We also shot the pilot outside. And outside, I don't know if you've ever been outside, there's a lot of variables out there. So we were like, we should probably shoot inside. So we had to find a space. We can go to the next slide, Paul. We found a space at an art studio at like 12th and Carpenter, and it was just a big art space. It was completely empty, so we brought in furniture. And some of the furniture, this picture, this is some of our talent. And as you can see, craft services was I have an electric griddle, and I would just make grilled cheese and French toast. So we were parking our own cars, making food for everyone. I was running to Costco and buying stuff. All of the furniture we either like trash picked or got on Facebook Marketplace. This is the back of my car during production because I was getting shirts, I was washing wardrobe at home at night and then ironing it. This was my really expert sketch of the set. This is my small child helping put the set together. The plywood, I had COVID, but we still needed to keep doing stuff, and I found it in the dumpster, and I was like, I'm just gonna carry this upstairs by myself. And so while I had COVID, I carried it upstairs. And to this day, I'm like, how did that happen? Did I just black out and carry a piece of wood up here? So we were so scrappy on this project. We were doing everything. It's myself, 3 associate producers, and a part-time community relations coordinator. We were directing, ADing, script supervising, making our own props. The rule was, if you want to see it happen, you have to do it. So if someone writes in their script like, and then they all paint portraits, I'm like, cool, you painting portraits? I don't know how to paint a portrait. And so the people were like, yeah, I'll paint a portrait. So we shot most of this over 6 weeks. So every single day, just shooting and shooting. It was also a new process for our crew. Remember, WHYY's only done local documentaries, only done news shows. So we're working with scripts, with shot lists, with kind of slating, which is important so you can edit something later. It was like a breakneck speed and really intense. This production wrapped. Oh, we also had a hermit crab that we kept alive, and I don't know how we did that either. Very lethargic hermit crab. At the end, this production, the bulk of it wrapped in early September, and I knew we were loading in for Albie in October. So on our downtime, when we weren't doing this show, we were writing Albie and working with our educational consultant and trying to get everything in line for Albie to start next.
So, all right, so Albie started next, right? So meanwhile, while Caitlin's doing all this, Kevin and I are putting together what will become this production. And there were, like Caitlin said, some parameters that we had to deal with because of what the budget was, which was we were shooting at WHYY studio, which they'd never shot in before. It had only been used ever as a large meeting room. So it was their first time dealing with anyone using it for production. Also, with outsiders, they are not very good with people coming in from outside WHYY. So there were a lot of things for them to figure out. Also, they had, some might say, draconian COVID measures still in place that we had to follow, which is cool, and no one got sick, and that's great. But we had to put together a crew, a team that would, like Caitlin was saying, feel the joy and be as enthusiastic as we were for it, because it wasn't going to work otherwise, right? So we had Hannah, who you'll see in there a few times, was our production designer, who did the entire job of an art department on a TV show almost single-handedly, also did wardrobe at the same time. Caitlin was still our craft service person, as well as being our showrunner. We had a lot of people who were brand new, who had just come out of school, Charles, who's over here, who produced the show with us,
Hi, Charles.
is a professor. And he brought his students in as, for some of them, their first job. So our set became a classroom just as much as it was a set. And there are challenges with that you can either be burdened with or accept and embrace as a part of the culture of what you're doing.
The main one being that we went from being like goofy guys goofing around with each other, playing with puppets, to teaching a whole crew how to be a crew. And that was, I think, maybe the biggest challenge for both of us.
We probably had 3 or 4 legitimate professional people working on this crew, and everyone else was essentially students, right? That was challenging for the students who were expected to do the job of professionals, and challenging for the professionals who were expected to teach the students as well as do their thing and deliver on those expectations. It was also oftentimes challenging for especially the puppeteers, who had to sort of wait while we worked through that with a breakneck schedule, which we'll talk about in a second.
Yeah, there are not a lot of people who've worked with puppets, who filmed puppets specifically. So when you bring in a crew to shoot puppets, you're kind of like, there's a huge learning curve. And some puppeteers are more forgiving and understand that like not every human being is a puppet, and you can shoot all of this of a human, but you can only shoot this of a puppet. So a lot of people get frustrated by that. So that was a big challenge, but the puppeteers.
And we would always block things out. So it's like, all right, the puppet's going to do this, and and everyone's like, how is that going to work? And we're like, trust me, man, it's going to work. It's fine. But it is, I remember calling one guy who's in here somewhere and saying like, look, man, this is not going to be the most glamorous job. You're not going to get paid great. You're going to get paid, but I promise you'll remember this job for the rest of your life, and you'll have an amazing time. Yeah. Which I guess now in retrospect also could be abusive behavior, but promise you it was true, and he looks at it that way. That's Hannah, our
art director and wardrobe person, and everything else. Hannah just would like show up with like, I didn't know what you actually wanted for this costume for a mailman, so I made 10 bespoke like patches and hats and shit for it, and you choose which one. And you're like, they're all perfect. Yeah, and that was just Hannah's attitude, and that was pretty much everybody's attitude for the most part, except one person who you have to guess who that was. Just kidding, everybody's great. It was not Caitlin, it was not you.
But that was true for Hannah and for Devin, our DP, and for a lot of other people. KG, who was our gaffer, who also would make like light fixtures that had to appear in situ. Yeah. We were moving at a speed that demanded that whatever they brought to the table as their creative expression was what we went with. We had to. It had to be. We had to honor that as the intention from the beginning, because there was no time or money for options.
So I just want to throw out there real quick something that Big Howl has always done, which is Paul and I. It's like we'll always figure out. It's never, well, we can't do that. It's always that might not work, but here's how we can do it in a different way. And that's how we've worked together forever. Is that like if I can't build something, Paul will be like, I'll take care of it, and Paul will build a miniature diorama of like rats singing in his basement, and I'll take care of like some giant walk around puppet, and then we'll come together and we'll do it. But like neither of us, like I have a background in puppet building, but like I'm not good at it. I just do it because nobody else was going to do it. And same with animation. It's like I'm not great at it, but I just did it because no one else was going to do it. That's kind of what this crew was like. This crew was like, well, I've never done it before, but I'm just going to do it because someone's got to do it. And I think it shows in the show that it's like, it's a really cute show. And that's what we looked for in a team, and that's what we continue to look for in a team, is people who will see a challenge, and instead of being like, you're an idiot, no one will ever do that, that's the dumbest thing anyone's ever thought of doing, and instead we'll be like, oh, this is a fun challenge, let's figure out how to work together through this as a team. So that's, I think, when I think of Albies, that's what I think of, and I think, we had like chants that we would all chant, which it's sounding like a cult the more we talk about it. We had the puppet show chant, we had the crab chant, which you'll all see a picture of at some point. It was less of a chant, more of just like a crab character that we would all do. But yeah, it was.
Get on with it, Kevin.
What's that? Did you say get on with it?
Yeah, get on with it, Kevin.
Well, the crabs are underwater creatures. Is that what you're talking? Oh, yeah, sorry. But yeah, no, that's my aside. So back to the point.
I think we'll just. I probably jumped ahead a little bit here, but so this is Frozen. All right, so this is production. Albie's Elevator was shot a year ago, roughly, from where we are now. What was our...
Sorry.
We started October 10th, and we shot until November 18th. So we shot, and Paul, you can break down these numbers too. We shot, every episode is comprised of 2 stories, a story A and a story B, and we shot 1 story per 9-hour day. Which is normal, right, Paul?
Nope. So normal TV production, normal film and video production averages 5 pages-ish a day. That's 5 minutes a day. Sitcoms are shot normally in 3 shoot days. We were shooting 15-minute stories linearly in 9 hours every day. And that meant doing it, shooting it, prepping the next day, sometimes getting a script that we had been revised so much that it had changed as an animal completely from when it was blocked. Sometimes talent would drop out, we had to reschedule days, and so we would wrap our day at 6 p.m., prep the next day until 9 or 10, sometimes 1 in the morning, get back into it the next day. And it was a breakneck speed for something like this, especially at the quality we wanted it to have.
Yeah,
and it had to be. We had to figure out a modularity to it. Go ahead.
And a lot of that was just kind of being like, all right, this team do this team do that. So like Paul was saying, KG, our gaffing and lighting technician guy, and Devin Vocal, who was our DP, be like, all right, here's a really complicated light gag or camera movement gag, and they would figure that out. We had puppeteers.
Or give us a version of that. Whatever you got.
Sedwan and Emily, who are incredibly talented puppeteers, who we'd be like, all right, here's a tough puppet gag. How would you guys do this? They'd run off and figure it out and then bring it back to us. So it was a lot of that. It was a lot of like Hannah Hamilton, again, our art director, who was amazing. We'd be like, we need an entire town made out of cardboard boxes that fills the entire elevator. And she'd be like, this is not the biggest problem ever. And she would just figure it out and come back with it.
And she would have a town of boxes. She had a town of boxes in 4 days. Like,
yeah.
Incredible. And then sometimes it was like, hey, we need a birdhouse tomorrow. And she would just show up with a birdhouse, and whatever the birdhouse she showed up with was perfect. It was perfect. It had to be perfect, and it was perfect because it was always intended to be the way that it was. And that was the way that this production ran for those however many.
Yeah, we had exactly 30 days to shoot everything because, again, we were shooting at WHYY in an office space that's typically in a room that's typically used for meetings. And our facility guy, who I adore, and has obviously a lot on his plate and other things, he just kept coming in and being like, we have a board meeting first week of December. You guys going to be out of here? And I was like, yeah. I think so. I hope so. So it was so much stuff all at the same time.
And he's a delightful guy, but like we'd be in the middle of all this, and he'd be like, you know, you guys are using a lot of paper towels. And I'd be like, okay, let's just jump on the paper towel issue.
Or like we went in to use a smoke machine, and I had to go and be like, can we use a smoke machine? And he was like, give me a couple hours to think about it. And I'm like, cool, I want to use it right now. Can we use it right now? And he'd be like, fine. So we named a character after him. He's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
He's in.
They reference Brad at some point. Shout out
yeah,
Brad.
they do. Yeah. The neighbor.
Yeah. You want to go to the next slide?
All right, hold on. So 1 year ago today, we shot this episode, Snowflake Heartache. So 1 year ago, exactly to today, we were doing this episode that required hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of snowflakes be cut by hand and then decorated for what is about 4 minutes of screen time, which Caitlin's other show had a if you write it, you have to do it rule. This show didn't have that, but Hannah, I was freaking out about it. I was like, how are we going to ever have 1 million snowflakes and redecorate this whole set? And Hannah, in her typical fashion, was like, it's fine, I'll just do it. And she just did. But this is where we were exactly 1 year as we stand here today.
Yeah. Hannah, it was a two-person art team. Thank you. It was a two-person art team that would occasionally have to grab like the script supervisor or another PA from somewhere else. But for the most part, it was Hannah and one other person, an assistant, throwing together like a 5-person, 6-person team that would have weeks to put all this stuff together.
And that's something like, yeah, there's a drawback to having a crew of non-professionals, but there's also a benefit, is that you could ask them to do anything, right? So our script supervisor was a PA who could do anything, and our AD was a PA who could do anything. And so you would just, like, I need all 3 of you to puppeteer these stick figures.
Peps.
Whoa.
What?
What?
Peps. They're called peps.
Peps are not an outward-facing nomenclature.
Peps are the puppets. They're not stick. Sorry, whatever.
I was being vague. Okay, anyway, so we wrapped the show. This is us doing our Crab Wednesday pose for our final shoot photo, and we wrapped the show when?
November 18th.
November 18th. Went right into post-production. Caitlin and her team were still shooting the field packages with the artists.
Yeah, so every episode features a real artist or place. So we had 28 field packages to shoot and 6 music videos. So we were doing that while we were doing post-production on the other show and post-production on this. And also weirdly, like, I don't know, graphic designing stuff and like putting together press materials and trying to get those stations to pick it up, all of that at the same time.
And an insurmountable amount of ADR, too, for puppets and character voices. And so post-production went from November to July of this year, and the show went live in July and went national in September. So for everybody that worked on the show, they pieced out in November and heard nothing, but we have been living with this since. Okay, we can do it. So that brings us to now, and the show is done. Oh, there should not, sure, there shouldn't be audio on this, but that's okay. I'm gonna pause it. So the show is out, it is done, it is out in the world, and we, of course, are now rich and famous and done forever working on anything.
I have a boat. It's as big as this building. I don't have a boat.
Yeah, so where we are right now is kind of, public media is so interesting in the sense that we have metrics for success for this project. So remember we talked about the original 10 stations that had to commit to air it. Right now we're being distributed through American Public Television, and we have over 40 stations that are airing the show, which is really exciting. So like, that's a huge metric. We had lesson plans that were created by Anna Phillips, who's here, and Liz Bale, who's our community relations coordinator. So every episode has a corresponding lesson plan with accessible art materials, talking points for caregivers and educators. Everything's translated into Spanish. It won a public media award for educational resources for the community, which is really exciting in terms of actual like viewership on broadcasts, which is not great for kids typically. They're typically not using broadcast television. We're up 70% year over year for that time slot. People are tuning in for Albie and sticking around after, which is exactly what we want. So we have all these awesome success metrics that really don't translate into anything for us from a budget perspective for season 2. So like normally in commercial TV, you have that kind of distribution, you would be seeing some licensing fee for that. It's public media, it's free. It's free for anyone to program because we just want it to be as widespread as possible. Having that viewership, that doesn't mean anything for us. So it's really challenging because public media is forever reliant on philanthropic giving. So right now we're waiting to see what happens for a second season, and it's really just dependent on if people think this is a worthwhile thing to fund and bring back, which is tough, but public media is supposed to just be there and be a service for people and be something that is available and accessible for everyone in our community. And so we're really proud to serve that part of it and hoping that people see the value in it and can kind of come to the table and help us play with puppets more.
Thank you. I'll give you all the money I have. You're welcome.
Sell your boat.
Sell my boat. Yeah.
And for us, we did this. We're extremely proud of it. We'll look back at it even now, only 2 months later, and are nostalgic for all of it. But we love what we did. We love the people we met, the community we built. But as far as like from a business goes, we're kind of back at a starting point again. But everyone looks at this and goes, man, those guys, they did it. They're successful. They must have all that WHYY money. We have nothing. We just did the thing, and now we're just looking for work. And we're
If you have work.
If you have work, give us work. So
Boats are hungry.
whatever the next project ends up being, it won't be Albie's. We'll be able to translate what we learned from this to that, but it's never going to be a one-to-one thing. It's always going to be a brand new invention, and that's the way every production I've ever been on is. You can't look at anything and go, this will be a cakewalk because we did it before. We've never done it before. It's always brand new, and that is the thing about when we talk about endurance. This was an exercise in endurance, but the entire thing is an exercise in endurance. What we do, the nature of what we do, is an exercise in endurance. You're constantly enduring new learnings, new developments to the next project, to the next cycle of your career, and no good creative, I think, ever gets to get there, right? Gets to just like be where they wanted to be and give up and stop. Doctors, insurance people can plateau, but if we're good at, my parents are insurance people, I can say that, but if we're doing what we're doing for our lives, it's constantly going to be a process of enduring through things like this and new learnings and new ways of doing things, but that's not a challenge or a tribulation, it's kind of a gift. And like, this was a gift for us. Being able to do this, I like to say that like, we will go to bed having done something that people will die wishing they'd done. And that's the thing to remember. For everything we do, as you endure through it, you're not going through a challenge, you're building another beautiful memory for the future, for the next time, right? And so that's when we think of it. And anything else that?
No, I think you said that really nicely, Paul.
That was beautifully punctuated.
So I had one more little.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you so much, Caitlin, Kevin, and Paul.